The free-spirited frontier woman in a clean red dress, laughing with her hair down, riding wild across the plains. That's the story Hollywood sold for 100 years. All lies, pure fantasy. The real respectable woman in the Old West lived under a rule book nobody printed, nobody signed, and nobody could escape. A rule book enforced by her own mother, her husband, her pastor, and the gossiping churchwives who watched every step she took. Break one rule, cross your legs the wrong way, laugh too loud at a barn dance, let a strand of hair fall loose on a Tuesday afternoon, and by sundown, the whole town knew. By Sunday, the pastor knew. By next month, your engagement was broken off, and the churchwives had stopped nodding at you on Main Street. Today, you're going to hear 20 of these rules. Every one of them real. Every one of them paid for in quiet, unmarked graves across the American West. Grab your coffee, lock the door, and come with me. Fact number 1. No visible rouge or lip tint. Approximately 240 words. Number 1. No visible rouge or lip tint. It's 1885. Sunday morning in a dusty Kansas town, church bells ringing across the rooftops. A young woman walking the last 50 yards to the chapel door. You pause behind a cottonwood. You pinch your cheeks hard until they burn. You bite your lower lip until you taste iron in your mouth. Then you walk in. Because if you dabbed a single drop of rouge on your face that morning, by the time the sermon ended, the whisper would already be moving pew to pew. Painted lady. And painted lady in 1885 didn't mean fashionable. It meant prostitute. It meant the women of the congregation would stop speaking to your mother by Tuesday. It meant the school board would quietly reconsider your teaching contract by Wednesday afternoon. A small jar of Dr. Barry's rouge, hidden under the floorboard, cost 40 cents through the Sears catalog, about half a day's wages for a laundress. Most women never dared buy one. They bit their lips raw behind cottonwoods instead and tasted their own blood walking into God's house. Here's the part they never told you. The same preachers who condemned rouge had no objection to women eating arsenic for the same pale-cheeked effect. It was the visibility that was sinful, not the vanity. A woman could poison herself into her grave quietly, but she could not brighten her own cheek in public. Fact number 2. No tan ever. Approximately 240 words. Number 2. No tan ever. Texas, 1887. 105 degrees in the shade, and there isn't much shade. A farmer's wife walking the quarter mile to the well. Bonnet pulled down to her eyebrows. Veil over that. Long sleeves buttoned at the wrist. Gloves. In triple-digit heat, with a wooden yoke and 2 full buckets across her shoulders, she is covered from hairline to fingertip. Because a sun-darkened face in 1887 didn't mean you'd had a nice summer. It meant you were a field hand, a Mexican, or an Indian. And in that rule book's language, all 3 disqualified you from respectable society. Freckles were worse. A freckled bride-to-be in Kansas could find herself a bride-to-be no longer. The engagement quietly dissolved over coffee between the mothers. So the women turned to mail-order remedies. Dr. Barry's freckle ointment, shipped from St. Louis, 50 cents a bottle, a full day's wages for a seamstress. The active ingredient was mercury. It bleached the skin by poisoning it from the inside. Women applied mercury cream weekly for years. The tremors started in their 40s. The teeth fell out in their 50s. Nobody connected it to the bottle because nobody was allowed to discuss a woman's vanity, so nobody tracked the cause. Today, we pay good money to darken our skin on purpose. In 1887, a tan on a white woman could end an engagement before the parents finished discussing the dowry. The women who worked the hardest were punished the most for looking like it. Fact number 3. No hair loose outside the bedroom. Approximately 240 words. Number 3. No hair loose outside the bedroom. A Wyoming ranch house, 1883. Before sunrise, a married woman of 26 sits at a small mirror brushing her daughter's hair by the light of a single oil lamp. By the time the sun clears the ridge, her own hair is pinned, braided, and covered. And it will stay that way until she walks back into her bedroom that night, shuts the door, and lets it down in front of exactly one man, her husband. In that world, a married woman's loose hair in public was not an accident, not a style. It was the 1880s equivalent of walking into the general store in your undergarments. The pins went in at 5 a.m. and came out at 9 p.m., and by noon the ache at the temples was bone deep. Cutting her hair short after marriage was grounds for scandal. A wife with a shortcut was a wife with something to hide. An affair, an illness, a defiance, and any of the three was ruinous. Some women went 40 years of marriage without their neighbors ever seeing their hair below the ear. My grandma used to say her own grandmother had hair down past her waist, and she never saw it loose once in her life. Not at breakfast, not even when she was laid out for her own funeral. They pinned her up for the coffin. A woman's hair belonged to one man, and the town enforced it for him. Fact number 4. No showing ankle. Approximately 230 words. Number 4. No showing ankle. Main Street, Abilene, Kansas, 1884. It rained hard the night before, and the street is 6 inches of mud and horse manure baking in the morning sun. A young woman needs to cross to the dry goods store. Her skirt is already dragging through it. 2 men stand talking on the opposite boardwalk. She does not lift the skirt. She turns her back to them, hikes the hem maybe 2 inches, never more, and crosses sideways like a crab, because an exposed ankle in 1884 was the equivalent of an exposed thigh 100 years later. A cowboy who caught a glimpse of the shopkeeper's daughter's ankle that week would talk about it for a month. A replacement skirt, ruined beyond saving by the mud, cost $3 to $5, a full week's wages for a domestic servant. So the skirt stayed muddy, got washed, got worn again, reeking of the street. Picture the weight of a wet, mud-heavy hem swinging against the back of your calves for the rest of the afternoon, and the smell when it dried indoors that evening, hanging near the stove. A woman today shows ankle to the grocery clerk without a thought. In 1884, the same ankle could cost her the banker's son. They dressed women like freight and then judged them for looking tired. Fact number 5. No crossed legs. Approximately 235 words. Number 5. No crossed legs. A parlor in Missouri, 1886. Sunday afternoon, the good china out. 4 women, 2 teenage daughters, and a visiting pastor sitting stiff-backed in the armchair by the window. The pastor compliments the eldest daughter on her piano playing. She smiles, sits back on the settee, and, without thinking, crosses her right leg over her left. Her mother stands up and slaps her across the face in front of the guest, hard. The girl is 16. She'd been slapped for the same offense since she was 6. Because a respectable woman sat with both feet flat on the floor, knees pressed, ankles in line. Crossed legs meant suggestive. Suggestive meant fast. Fast meant the pastor would mention it to his wife by supper, and by Tuesday, the courting boys would be warned off. My great-aunt used to say her mother's hand was so fast on her knee she never saw it coming. Learned to sit like a statue by the time she was 8. The women who slapped their daughters for crossed legs had all been slapped themselves. The rule was passed hand to hand, mother to daughter, 100 years in an unbroken chain, and nobody could remember who started it. The rule book enforced itself through the women it had already broken. Fact number 6. No laughing loudly. A barn dance in Nebraska, 1889. Fiddle music screeping through the rafters, lantern light swinging, 40 neighbors gathered on a Saturday night. A young wife throws her head back and laughs, loud, open-mouthed, real, at something her brother-in-law said about a stubborn mule. Across the barn, 3 church wives exchange a look. That look is the verdict. By the next morning, it's being said at the general store that she laughs like a saloon girl. By Sunday, the pastor's wife has stopped speaking to her. Invitations stop coming. Within 6 months, she and her husband sell the farm and move 2 counties over to start again where nobody knows the story. A good wife laughed behind a hand or a folded fan. Quiet. Contained. A sound meant for the room she was already in, never the room next door. Here's the part they never told you. Men laughed however they wanted. Loud, obscene, doubled over, slapping knees. The same barn, the same night, 40 male laughs roaring under the rafters, and not a single one was noted. One woman's open mouth ended her life in that town. Today, a loud laugh gets a woman invited to the next girls' night. In 1889, it got her invited out of the county. The West was loud for men and silent for their wives. Fact number 7. No speaking to unmarried men without a chaperone. Approximately 240 words. Colorado, 1885. A young woman of 20, engaged to a rancher's son for 4 months, runs into the blacksmith's apprentice on the sidewalk outside the post office. He's single. She stops to ask after his mother, who has been ill with fever. 6 minutes of conversation, in full daylight, on Main Street. No third party witnesses it, but the apprentice's landlady is watching through her front window. That evening, she mentions it to her husband. The husband mentions it at the feed store on Thursday. By Friday, the engagement is off. The rancher's son returns the ring with a note folded twice. The young woman's mother spends the rest of her life explaining to visiting cousins that Emma was always careful. It was a misunderstanding. Emma never marries. She is 20 years old. Courting itself was done in parlors, with the mother sewing in the corner, 3 feet from the couple, for the entire duration of the visit. A woman caught riding alone in a buggy with a man she wasn't engaged to could be shunned for 6 months. Some were shunned for life. Imagine the burn of 100 church eyes on the back of your neck when you walked in late the following Sunday, pretending to look for your hymnal. In a land advertised as endless freedom, a woman's entire future could turn on 6 minutes of sidewalk conversation. Fact number 8. No smoking, no drinking, no saloons. 240 words. A farmhouse in Indian Territory, 1891. A 34-year-old wife and mother of 4, alone in the kitchen. She bolts the door from the inside. The children are down for their nap, the husband out in the south pasture. She opens the flour canister on the high shelf. Behind it, a brown bottle. She tips it into her coffee. 2 fingers, then 3. She drinks. The label reads, Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup, or Hestetter's Stomach Bitters. The active ingredient is morphine or laudanum or 45% alcohol, often all 3 in the same bottle. A bottle costs 75 cents through the Sears catalog. She has 4 hidden around the house. She has been drinking from them for 9 years. Picture the cold sweat at 10 a.m. when the last bottle had run dry and the new one hadn't arrived in the mail. The husband asking at supper why she looked pale. The careful, flat lie in return. Here's what they never told you. A whole generation of frontier wives were quiet, lifelong opiate addicts. Nobody called it addiction. It was called delicate health. Patent medicine companies made fortunes selling laudanum tonics marketed to women who couldn't be seen drinking whiskey. Today, a bad day ends in a glass of wine on the porch, openly. In 1891, it ended with a locked kitchen and a bottle behind the flour. And if the smell lingered too long on her breath, she could wake up in an asylum by Monday, committed by the husband's signature alone. The rule book didn't stop the drinking. It forced it underground, where it killed more women than the whiskey ever did. Fact number 9. No bicycles, no riding astride. Approximately 230 words. Number 9. No bicycles, no riding astride. A Wyoming town, 1894. The first Sears Roebuck ladies' bicycle has just arrived by freight. The young school teacher buys it. $20, 2 months of her salary. She rides it down Main Street one Saturday afternoon, ankles flashing in the sun once. She rides it once. By Sunday, the pastor has preached a full sermon on the devil's carriage. By Monday morning, 3 parents have pulled their daughters from her classroom. By the end of the week, the school board has terminated her contract with no letter of reference. She is looking for work in a different territory before the month is out. Riding a horse astride, legs on either side like any cowboy, was worse. That was reserved for prostitutes, for widows of independent means, and for Calamity Jane, whom respectable women crossed the street to avoid. A rancher's daughter who climbed onto a horse like her brother could be locked in the house for a week and whipped by her father for it. The lady's bicycle cost $20. The side saddle she should have bought instead cost $35, and it required a second saddle horse trained to carry it. Today, a woman on a bicycle is invisible. In 1894, she was evidence. The West gave women horses and then told them exactly how to sit on them. Fact number 10. The corset rule, approximately 280 words. A bedroom in Montana, 1882. 5:30 in the morning, the lamp still burning. A mother stands behind her 12-year-old daughter, corset laces in both hands. She braces a knee against the small of the girl's back. She pulls. The girl gasps. She pulls again, harder. The target is an 18-inch waist. The girl's natural waist is 24. This will take 6 months of daily tightening, and by the end of it, the girl's lower ribs will be permanently displaced inward, compressing her liver and her stomach. She will faint at least once a week for the rest of her teenage years, and everyone in that town will call it femininity. Listen for the sound of a rib giving under the laces, a low, muffled pop somewhere between the shoulder blade and the hip, and the girl being told to stand up straight and stop crying. A respectable woman wore her corset from age 12 until the grave, during pregnancy, while cooking over a wood stove in a Montana July, while giving birth. Miscarriages were epidemic. Organ prolapse, the uterus, the bladder, collapsing down and out of the body in old age, followed these women into their final years, and the cause was never named in any medical record. No country doctor was permitted to blame a virtuous woman's undergarments. The punishment for not wearing one was social death. An unlaced woman over the age of 12 was not a woman. Today, women wear yoga pants to the grocery store without a thought. In 1882, a woman's own mother cracked her ribs before she hit the 8th grade in the name of beauty. The corset killed more frontier women than the smallpox did, and not a single grave marker says so. We're at the halfway point, and it only gets darker from here. If you're still with me, do me a favor. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. These are the kinds of stories the history books left out, and the more support this video gets, the more of them I can bring you. Now, the second half. Fact number 11. No trousers ever. Number 11. No trousers ever. Kansas, 1877. A widow of 31 is running a cattle operation alone after her husband died of pneumonia the winter before. 3 hired hands, 400 head of cattle, 12-hour days in the saddle. She starts wearing her late husband's canvas trousers to work the herd. It is the practical choice, the only choice. She is arrested on a complaint filed by the pastor of the nearest town. The charge, masquerading in male attire. She spends 2 nights in the town jail, in a cell across from a drunk and a horse thief. The fine is $10, 2 weeks of income for a working widow. She pays it. She wears the trousers again the next day because the cattle don't care about the pastor, and she is arrested a second time before the month is out. There are documented cases like hers from Wyoming, from Kansas, from the Dakota Territory. In at least one Wyoming case, a widow was committed to an asylum for observation. Her only symptom was wearing trousers to chop firewood behind her own house. A divided riding skirt was scandalous enough to get a woman refused service at a hotel. Actual trousers could land her in a cell. Today, a woman wears jeans to church and nobody notices. In 1877, the same woman could sleep in a jail cell for wearing her dead husband's work pants to run his cattle. The West demanded women do a man's work in a woman's clothes, or go to jail trying. Fact number 12. Bathing shame, approximately 230 words. Bathing shame. A sod house in Nebraska, August 1886. 106 degrees outside, hotter inside. A family of 7, 1 wooden tub in the kitchen, Saturday night. The water is heated on the stove in iron kettles and poured in. The husband bathes first, then the oldest son, same water, then the younger sons, same water, then the wife, after everyone else, in water that is now lukewarm and gray and floating with the day's work. Then the daughters, last of all. 1 bath, per person, per week, and more frequent bathing was considered vain, even sinful. A woman who washed twice a week was suspected of vanity. A woman who washed daily was suspected of worse. Between baths, she freshened with a damp cloth in the privacy of her own room and said nothing about it. Imagine 6 days of 106-degree prairie heat, 6 layers of petticoats, a corset laced at dawn, a long-sleeved wool dress, and a bonnet. 1 bath a week in water 7 people had used before her. The smell at church on Sunday morning was something no memoir of the era ever admitted to, and no photograph could ever show. Hollywood scrubbed the West clean on film. The real West smelled like a barnyard in July, and the rulebook said pretending otherwise was the greater sin. Fact number 13, the arsenic workaround, approximately 250 words. Number 13, the arsenic workaround. A farmhouse in Iowa, 1888. The Sears catalog open on the kitchen table. Page 412. The advertisement reads, Dr. James P. Campbell's Safe Arsenic Complexion Wafers for the clear, translucent skin of a lady of quality. $1 per box, shipped discreetly in plain wrapper. The wife orders 3 boxes. She eats 1 wafer every morning with her coffee, the way another woman might take a vitamin. Her skin pales. Her cheeks take on that translucent, bloodless look the rulebook demands, the look she could not achieve with rouge because rouge was forbidden. She eats arsenic for 11 years. Watch what happens across those 11 years. Hair coming out in the comb by the hundreds of strands after the 4th year. The slow loss of appetite. Stomach cramps at 40 that no doctor can explain. The skin tone still beautiful in the coffin at 47. Arsenic complexion wafers sold in mainstream catalogs from the 1870s through the 1910s. Thousands of women died of stomach cancers and organ failure that would be blamed on weak constitution or female complaints. The true cause sitting in a small blue box on the dresser next to the Bible. Today's beauty aisle has warning labels in 6 languages and a lawsuit waiting behind each one. In 1888, Sears mailed you arsenic to the farmhouse in a plain brown wrapper with a smiling lady on the label. The rule said no paint on the outside, so the women painted themselves from the inside, and the inside is where it killed them. Fact number 14, lead powder for the face, approximately 240 words. Number 14, lead powder for the face. A dressing table in San Francisco, 1891. A woman of 43, a silver hand mirror, a small porcelain jar, and the morning light coming through lace curtains. The jar is Laird's Bloom of Youth, 65 cents a jar through the catalog, 40% lead by weight. She dabs it onto her cheeks, her forehead, her throat, every morning, for 22 years. It gives her skin the flawless, powdery whiteness the rulebook demands. Not visible paint, nothing a pastor could point to, just a flawless complexion, the way a lady of quality was supposed to naturally look. Watch the slow arithmetic of it. The tremor in her hands by 50, the paralysis of the facial muscles by 55. The dark line around the gums, the lead line, visible every time she smiles at her grandchildren at Christmas dinner. Laird's Bloom of Youth was the most popular face powder in America for nearly half a century. It was mentioned by name in lawsuits, in medical papers, in obituaries written carefully to avoid naming it, and it's sold anyway. A generation of women died in their 50s and 60s of lead poisoning, so slow and so socially sanctioned that no country doctor would write it on the death certificate. My grandma used to say her great-aunt had skin like porcelain right up to the end. Nobody mentioned that the porcelain was killing her. The rulebook said, look pale. The jar made you pale. The jar made you dead. Fact number 15. Belladonna eye drops, approximately 230 words. Number 15. Belladonna eye drops. A bedroom in St. Louis, 1889. A young woman of 22 preparing for a spring dance. A small brown bottle on the vanity, next to the hairpins and the mother-of-pearl hand mirror. 1 drop in each eye. 30 cents a bottle from the corner druggist. The extract is Atropa belladonna, deadly nightshade. Within 10 minutes, her pupils dilate so wide the color of her iris nearly disappears, leaving two black pools where her eyes used to be. She has the doe-eyed look the rule book demands. Her vision blurs. Light stabs at the back of her skull every time she glances at a lantern. She cannot read the dance program. She cannot see the faces of the men who ask her to dance. But she is beautiful, and she is pursued, and she does this every week for 15 years. Here's what they never told you. Thousands of frontier and town women went blind in their 50s, and the real cause, drops they'd bought for 30 cents a bottle across 4 decades, was never recorded on a single medical chart. They were diagnosed with aging weakness. Some were accused of feigning blindness for attention. The little brown bottle on the dresser was never mentioned once. Today, blindness at 50 gets investigated. In 1889, a blind widow of 52 was simply a blind widow, and the bottle went into the trash with the rest of her things. A woman could lose her sight to a rule nobody ever wrote down. Fact number 16. The morning dress rule. Approximately 240 words. Number 16. The morning dress rule. A farm in Ohio, 1884. 3 days after her husband's burial, a 32-year-old widow stands in her bedroom in front of an open wardrobe, looking at 30 months of her future hanging on wooden pegs. Year 1. Solid black wool, winter and summer, no exceptions. No jewelry beyond a mourning brooch with her husband's hair woven behind glass. No social visits, no music, no weddings, no celebrations of any kind. Year 2. Black with black trim finally permitted, a little crepe at the collar. Year 2.5. Half mourning, gray and lavender only. She cannot remarry. She cannot host a supper. If she wears a color before the 30 months are out, the town decides her husband meant nothing to her, and no respectable man will ever court her in that county. Feel the weight of black wool in a 98-degree Ohio July, standing over a wood stove cooking for 3 children, sweat rolling down her back, the cheap dye running onto her skin and staining it gray. Meanwhile, the widower, a man, expected to be out of mourning in 90 days. Many remarried within 6 months, some within 6 weeks. Nobody raised an eyebrow. My great-aunt wore black for 3 years for a man she'd been married to for 11. Her husband's brother, widowed the same winter, remarried in 4 months, and nobody said a word. A man's grief lasted a season. A woman's grief lasted half a decade, and the rulebook called them equal. Fact number 17. The wedding night ignorance rule. Approximately 245 words. Number 17. The wedding night ignorance rule. A hotel room in Denver, 1883. A bride of 16, still in her wedding dress. A small bathroom off the bedroom with a brass bolt on the door. Her mother has told her nothing, literally nothing. The church has told her nothing. Her older sister was forbidden by their mother, over the Bible, to tell her anything. She has been taught from the age of 10 that ignorance is virtue, that any girl who knows is a girl who is already ruined, and that a good bride arrives at her marriage bed knowing less than her own mare. Her husband of 4 hours knocks on the bathroom door. She does not answer. She sits on the cold tile floor with her wedding dress bunched around her and stays there until dawn, listening through the wood to a stranger pacing the room she is supposed to be sharing with him. This was not rare. This was the rule. In 1,000 small towns, in 10,000 hotel rooms and bedrooms, brides between 14 and 20 locked themselves away from men they had just married, genuinely believing they were about to be assaulted. Many marriages were not consummated for weeks, some for months, some never. Divorce on those grounds was essentially impossible, so the bride simply lived with the silence and the husband with his, and the town never knew a thing. They called the silence virtue. What it really was cruelty dressed in lace. Fact number 18. The menstruation rule. Approximately 240 words. Number 18. The menstruation rule. A farmhouse in Kansas, 1887. Behind the barn at dusk. A small fire crackling in a ring of stones, and a woman feeding scraps of stained cotton into it, one after another, until the smoke rises thin and gray against the last light of day. Every month, for about a week, a respectable woman was considered unclean. She could not enter the church. In some households, she could not prepare her husband's food. She could not bathe in the shared family tub. She used rags. She washed them in a separate bucket, in secret, behind a closed door. When they wore out, she burned them behind the barn after dark, so no one on the road would see the smoke and know what was burning. There was no product, no pad, no tampon, no painkiller a woman was permitted to ask for by name at the general store. A doctor's visit for female complaints cost $3, a full week's food budget for a farm family, so no woman went. She bled, she cramped, she bled through her skirt in the fields, and she said nothing about it, ever. Today, there is an aisle at the drugstore with 40 options, priced and displayed in bright colors. In 1887, there was a rag, a bucket, and a fire behind the barn at dusk. Half the adults in the American West bled in secret every month of their adult lives, and the rule book called the bleeding itself the sin. Fact number 19. The tapeworm pill, approximately 265 words. Number 19. The tapeworm pill. The advertisement runs in a Chicago ladies' magazine in 1898, but the pills ship everywhere: Wyoming ranch houses, Arizona mining towns, Oregon logging settlements. Fat, the enemy of beauty. Our sanitized tapeworm cysts guarantee weight loss without effort. $1.50 per bottle, shipped in plain wrapper. A respectable married woman of 31, 2 children, a husband who has begun to make small comments about her waist at supper, orders a bottle. The capsule arrives by mail. Inside is a live tapeworm cyst, beef bread, packaged in a thin gelatin shell that dissolves in the stomach. She swallows it. It hatches. It grows. Over the next 6 months, it reaches 20 feet, then 30. She loses weight. Her husband is pleased. She also loses her hair, her color, her strength. She begins to have seizures in the kitchen. She is malnourished because a 30-foot parasite is eating every meal before her body can use it. When she finally collapses, the country doctor's only treatment is to pull the tapeworm out of her, inch by inch, through her mouth, with a stick wound slowly over several days so the worm does not break off and leave a piece behind to grow again. Some of them broke. Some women died of what stayed inside them. Tapeworm diet pills sold openly through respectable mail-order catalogs until the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. Thousands of women ordered them. A few of their obituaries listed stomach trouble. Most listed nothing at all. A woman would swallow a 30-foot parasite to stay pretty for a man who would remarry in 90 days if she died of it. Fact number 20. No makeup, even at your own wedding, approximately 240 words. Number 20. No makeup, even at your own wedding. A photographer's studio in Leadville, Colorado, 1885. A bride of 19, her hair pinned under a small white veil. A tintype camera on a wooden tripod. The photographer bent beneath a black cloth, adjusting the brass lens. The most photographed moment of her entire life. She is exhausted. She has been up since 4 in the morning helping prepare the wedding breakfast for 30 guests. Her corset has been cinched since sunrise, and her ribs ache with every breath. Her skin is sun-chapped from the walk to the church and back. Her cheeks are hollow from a year of arsenic wafers and 6 months of a tapeworm diet her mother-in-law insisted on. She cannot wear rouge. She cannot wear lip tint. She cannot wear powder beyond the barely visible lead dust already caked into her pores from a decade of Laird's bloom of youth. She sits. The photographer tells her not to smile. Teeth were considered vulgar in a portrait. She looks at the lens with the dead, flat, exhausted expression that defines nearly every surviving bridal tintype from the 1870s and 1880s. That photograph will hang on a parlor wall for 90 years. Go look at those sepia bridal photographs today. Every exhausted face in them is a woman at the end of a beauty regimen that would kill her, beginning a marriage under a rule book that would never release her. The somber frontier bride is not a style. It is the face of the rule book, carved forever. That was the invisible rule book. 20 rules, 1 woman, every day of her life, from 6 years old to the lid of her coffin. No Hollywood movie will ever show you this West, Because there's no hero in it, no showdown, no sunset ride. Just a quiet, endless surveillance that killed half the population slowly and called it virtue. Tell me in the comments which rule surprised you the most. Hit like, subscribe, ring the bell. And take care of your grandmothers. They carried a weight we'll never fully understand.